You are with Lauren Laverne, and I'm delighted to say that I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer. I can cross to Eno and Hyde, who are live at Maida Vale Studios right now. Hello, Brian, Karl, are you there?
Hello, Chicago.
Yes.
Hello, come in. How are you doing? Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. How's it looking over there in MV3? You're in the big room.
Yeah, lots of
It's
cables.
very big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of spaghetti. We're taking up knitting.
Lots of spaghetti. Is that the kind of nickname for all those leads that are all over the floor?
It is today, yeah.
Oh, I love it. I'm just picturing you among that imbroglio. Thank you very much for being with us, and congratulations on the release of the new album Someday World. It came out on Monday. Now, the project is part of an ongoing collaboration between you two, and I think it kind of began with your collection of beginnings. Brian, can you tell me about your collection of beginnings?
I have a big collection of beginnings and a very small collection of endings. So I tend to sit in the studio at night starting pieces of music, which I then often don't finish. However, I played some of these to Karl, particularly some of the ones that dated from the late 90s and early part of this century. And I said, I was trying to do something that was a kind of mixture between Steve Reich and Fela Kuti or something like that.
That's a good mixture.
A good mixture. And as soon as he heard them, he started playing, and suddenly I realised that these things could possibly get finished instead of sitting on the shelf for another decade.
Okay, so at this point you'd known each other for around 20 years. Is that right? Karl, how did you meet? I believe you shared a plane. Is that right, plane journey?
Yeah, that was a little while afterwards. Brian asked me to be part of a kind of art auction, I suppose, of personalities and people that were raising money for the War Child campaign to build a school out in Mostar for children that were traumatised by the war out there. So that's how we got to meet, and then eventually flew out to Mostar together and got talking about vocals and lyrics, as you do.
Okay. And you realised that you had quite a lot of common ground in terms of your approach to both art and music. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we were both art students, which always helps, which I think means that we came into music with the idea that it's a place where you could try something new, make an experiment. You didn't have to know exactly where you were going when you started out. In fact, on this record, we had quite a different idea of where we were going than where we actually ended up.
Yes, I read that you were expecting grimly industrial and ended up with happy.
That's right.
We failed miserably.
We failed in misery, yes.
Well, I think that sounds like a happy failure, actually.
Yeah.
We were discussing that on the radio just the other day, falling with style, as Buzz Lightyear would say. So, you're going to play 4 tracks for us today, which is really exciting. What are we going to hear first, guys?
First song is Daddy's Car.
Okay, it's over to you. This is Eno and Hyde live on 6 Music. Brilliant. Eno and Hyde live on BBC Six Music, sounding wonderful over there in MV3. Thank you so much. That's a new single, isn't it? It's going to be out next week.
So you say.
I believe.
Yes.
We've been locked away for a very long time.
You have been sequestered in the studio just working. So tell me about that, because Brian, as you said, you know, the beginnings pile that you kind of started to pick through to work on this project, that music had, some of it was kind of from 90s, noughties, but actually it sounds like this was quite a kind of quick record to make. You did it all in about a month, is that right?
Yeah, actually a little bit more. It was about 6 weeks.
Okay.
We aimed for a month, but yes, it was fast and it was exciting, you know, compared to a lot of the projects that one works on these days. It went very quickly and it was thrilling. Every day was exciting. All
right, tell me about the sessions. I read that you kind of started off with a plan and then went off-piste almost immediately.
This is the story of my life.
So what was plan A and how did it actually work out?
Plan A was to make very long, quite gritty industrial tracks, which were polyrhythmic. Well, this is polyrhythmic, but they were meant to be much longer. That's what we started out with. Then we started working with Fred Gibson, who's here with us today, who was co-producer of this album.
Fred is Fred still just 20?
He is 20.
We're trying to make him older, but he's not complying.
He's stubbornly 20.
Yeah.
Stubbornly 20. And when Fred came in, well, that was one of the reasons I think we went in a different direction. We suddenly started finding that we had a lot of songs to write.
Okay.
Something that I haven't done for a while, and I don't know when Karl last did it, but suddenly we were singing.
Yeah, it's great.
And
we were happy.
Right, so you did that. Did you do that in situ in the studio? Like how did those sessions work? I read that you had a whiteboard with some anti-normalising rules written on it.
Yes, we had a lot of rules.
Okay.
Most of which went out the window.
One of the rules I remember was avoid music. That was the idea that as soon as something started sounding like something you'd heard before, then you had to change it in some way or another.
Okay. I also I heard there was one, build cities on hills, which I found fascinating. Can you explain that for me?
Yes, well, this really came from finding that most of the cities I like a lot are built on hills, and it's because the architecture has to sort of squeeze itself round and track round those hills, and it forces very interesting architecture. Flat plains produce box buildings, basically. Okay. So we decided to start with an awkward landscape.
Okay. So you're almost dancing about architecture there. That's perfect. So tell me a little bit about the working days. I mean, Karl, for you, was this typical to your approach in the studio? Was this a kind of change of pace too?
It was extremely different. In recent years, most of the work that I've done has been file sharing, and this was working in the studio with people that you could see passing ideas around there and then, travelling in a lot. There's a lot of travelling in and out from Essex, which was always good for collecting the day's lyrics, and we'd often do that, things that we collected on the way into the studio. Both of us, we'd compile into the lyrics of the day. There was one of the rules, which was write something every day and sing it, which we did succeed on a few instances. But it was the three of us coming together and seeing where the music took us. And quite often there'd be a point where a microphone was handed over and here, sing something, and that would often inspires a form, which is what I think where we went off piste a little bit. We got too inspired.
It's a really be too inspired, I'm sure. But it's an interesting approach, that, isn't it? Because, you know, I've often thought about music now. One of the features of current music, I'm not saying it's good or bad, is that a lot of it is made in isolation. You know, and you talk about that kind of being in a room with other people and exchanging ideas, and it being a kind, you know, I don't want to use the word dialectic, but like being a kind of conversation and a thing that lots of different people contribute to. Do you think that the circumstances that a sound is made in is, you know, you can hear it in the finished product?
Well, I think you can certainly hear whether people are alive and having a good time in the finished product, and that was something that we cared about a lot. So although we're working on recording onto a computer, we weren't using the computer to make ourselves sound perfect. We were using it to allow us to do things that gave us sort of certain human freedoms that we might not have enjoyed otherwise.
Okay, well, we'd love to hear you play another track for us, if you wouldn't mind. I know we've got 4 today. What's it going to be next?
This track is called Witness.
Over to you, Eno.
Featuring the voice of Kasia Dashikowska in the middle.
Oh, wonderful. Over to you. Lauren Hyde, thank you so much.
Little do you know, that's the sound of misery.
It's motoric ecstasy, and I will not have anything else.
We tried so hard to make a serious album.
Oh, well, listen, that was absolutely spectacular and a huge success in our eyes. We're thrilled.
Thank you very much.
Thrilled to have you on the show. And we're going to have more music from you guys very shortly. For now, Eno and Hyde, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're with Lauren Laverne. I am in the studio in 6 Music Towers in London's West End, and I can now bring you live to Maida Vale Studios, where we have Eno and Hyde, Brian Eno and Karl Hyde, with us in session today. Gentlemen, hello. Thank you very much for bearing with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the people that worked on this record. So I'm interested in Fred, who you mentioned earlier, the 20-year-old producer who came into the mix and was very important.
Strangely, we're interested in Fred as well.
Yes, I'm very interested in Fred.
So where did Fred come from? How did he kind of come into the mix?
I met him about 5 or 6 years ago when he came round with the son of a friend of mine to my studio, and I was trying to explain to them how the music program Logic works. Mm-hmm. And after about 20 minutes of doing that, I realised that Fred was a genius on using Logic, but had discreetly and very kindly kept quiet about it so that I didn't look too stupid. Then I heard some of Fred's music, which I think is truly fantastic. He has recorded, I think, 932 pieces at the last count, none of which have been released, and I keep trying to encourage him to release them.
Okay.
They're really very interesting bits of work. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's very interesting that he would come together and collaborate with you on this, because I was going to ask, obviously the pair of you have such incredible music chops. I mean, how did you put him at his ease? It sounds like maybe perhaps he wasn't nervous. Perhaps he was.
No, Fred's not nervous at all. That's the great thing about this ensemble, is that there isn't any intimidation. We just all slotted in so well. It felt like we'd known each other for years, which I suppose we have, but as a three-piece, we really just came together in the studio, and that was the lovely thing about it. There was no hierarchy. We just got on together, and whoever sounded good ended up doing that thing. Exactly.
And tell me a little bit more about the contributors to the record, because there are a few other people that appear on it. I think Will Champion is in there, Andy McKay, John Reynolds.
Well, we've got some of the contributors here with us in the studio today. Leah Abrahams is playing guitar.
Fantastic.
We have Chris Vattelaro on drums, and the fabulous Don E on clavinet and organ and other things involving keys.
Okay.
And we also have a newcomer, Mercy Welbeck, who's singing backing vocals as well.
Okay. And
so those are some of the people who were on the record.
And how live was that done? I mean, were they kind of dropping in on sessions, or was it more of a, people, as you say, contributed little bits and bobs as required?
Dropping in, really. Most of the time it was the three of us sitting in the room working together. And then we would, when we got a little bit bored with each other, we'd invite somebody else in.
Leave the door ajar.
You mentioned earlier the unexpected result of this record, that you were expecting grimly industrial and then ended up with happy. Is that sort of unpredictable alchemical reaction something that happens often in the studio to either of you? Is that a kind of familiar experience?
I think it happens to everybody, but not everybody then pursues it, so sometimes wonderful things happen, but they don't fit in with the plan, so they get dropped. So we just abandoned the plan, really, and we followed the wonderful things.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about the lyrical inspiration. Karl, you said that a lot of it was, there was the rule to kind of have to write something on the day and sing that, use that. What else were you writing about in this record?
For my own part, I was bringing in things the way I've always written, which is things that I see and hear on my travels through the city. So because there was a lot of travelling, there was a lot of overheard conversations on trains and tubes, and I'd text them ahead to Brian so that he could amalgamate them into the things that he'd been thinking about, and again it was an exciting experience for me, because I've tended to be the lyricist and the singer, and to work with other voices that I respected and admired, and other points of view when it came to lyrics, was a new process, and we left it very open. There was no preciousness. You could quite often, Brian would say, I don't like that word, what about this one? And And at first there was a oh my God, that's a strange word, but it would work, and so very quickly we had our own process.
And what about you, Brian? Because you said that going back to writing songs was something that actually you hadn't done for a while.
Yeah, I think songwriting, if it's any good, always comes out of sort of excitement and enthusiasm. It hardly ever comes out of, I guess I better write a song because I've got to make a record. You don't get good songs like that. And I think I got excited about the form again. I hadn't been for quite a few years. Suddenly it came alive for me again.
Mm. Well, it's great to have you here, and we'd love to hear another song from you today. Which one are you going to do next, and can you tell us a little bit about the track before we hear it?
It's called Mother of a Dog, and I'll ask my friend Karl in his wonderful radio voice to tell you. He's got a much deeper voice than me.
Karl, employ your gravitas. Come on, what have we got?
What have we got here? We've got some.
See what I mean?
Do you like the? I like the before.
No.
This was a sound. It was a groove, a soundscape, and Brian handed me the microphone and said, "Sing something." So I went through the notebooks, and this looked appropriate for the sound that was being made. And I don't know, anything more than that is history.
Yeah.
Can you do
dog?
Can you do a version of the album with a director's commentary on from the
You really don't want to hear that.
Definitely.
That's a good idea.
Definitely buy that. Please do it. Ian Owen Hyde, back to you over in Maida Vale. This is another track from Someday World, the new album.
Raised by the sun.
Hyde live on BBC Six Music with Mother of a Dog from the new album Someday World. Thank you so much. It's fantastic to hear that played live, but I'd love to see it live as well.
Well, come on down.
Would that I could transport myself to the studio right now, but would there ever be any plans for you to maybe do something in the live arena?
There's always plans.
There's always plans, yes. This is something we don't discuss.
Okay.
With children around.
This is verboten.
No, we think about it sometimes. It needs a big band, you see.
It must be tempting.
Needs about 23 people.
But you know a lot of musicians. Brian, be all right. You could get a crew together. You could crew up for that.
Do you think I could?
You could make a few calls. It should work out.
Well, through the phone.
So what is the future of this project? I mean, it's an ongoing collaboration. Will you be continuing with it beyond this record? Will you be making another?
I think we will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah, we've got the bug now. Mm-hmm. We just seem to hit it off so well, and as soon as we've finished one thing, we'll come up with something else, and Brian will say, I know, and we'll all go, oh, great, can we have the night off? Just a weekend.
Okay. So and is there a plan on that score, or are you just going to see how it goes? Have you got other kind of commitments to fulfill in the next few months?
Yeah, we've always got other things going on. That is the beauty of what we're doing, is that we're not just in each other's pockets. You can go away and appreciate the good things that are happening out there, and what's good about this collaboration here. But so much material gets made that things fall out the side. That becomes a catalyst for the next thing. So we're always in perpetual conversation about what we're going to do next, and when we can get the time to get back together.
In fact, there are quite a lot of things left over from this album that actually are very respectable pieces. Listening to them again, we just didn't put them on here, so we have a lot of material.
How good are you at keeping track of all that, Brian? Because I'm interested in the idea of your kind of sound files and this beginnings kind of store of beginnings that you have, that the projects you might return to. I mean, I'm assuming that there's stuff you've kind of completely forgotten ever doing.
Yes, completely. I have an archive which has 3,418 unreleased pieces, even more than Fred. And sometimes I put that on random play. It's all stored in iTunes, so I just switch random play, and I hear things that I really don't recognise, and they say they're by me, so I guess I did them at some time.
Wow, okay, so you've got that archive to explore. And can you get to the end of a piece and not remember anything about it? Or
Yes, quite easily. Because quite often I work late at night and I'm sitting there on my own, and I just put a little rough mix of whatever I'm doing. Next day I come in and start something else, and I forget about the piece, and sometimes I don't listen to it again for several years.
Carl, you were in session with me not long ago playing tracks from Edgeland, your solo record. Will you be going back into working on some solo stuff next?
I think after this, I need to think about another band that I spend some time with, and the ongoing project here with Brian and Fred and the guys is something that I hope will continue for many, many years, and I have to go to my other home from time to time, and I'm looking forward to that too.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you here. Oh, and I've got one, Brian, I have a question. By popular demand of the Six Music listeners, Peter messaged us earlier to say, did you know that Brian Eno wrote the Windows 95 startup tune, which he mentioned as a factet, but it then subsequently revealed itself to be quite a controversial message. Other people claiming that it's just Wikipedia, crowdsourced information. Several fingers were pointed at Stuart McConey for coining a fact that might not be true.
No, Stuart was right. I did.
You did?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I spent nearly a week on it, which is a lot to spend on a piece of music that's 3.16 seconds long.
It's your best single to date.
We do albums in that time around here.
That's amazing. Okay, well, listen, I could talk to you all day, but I would love you to play us one more track before we have to let you go. What's it going to be?
This is called When I Built This World.
Eno and Hyde on Six Music. My word. Eno and Hyde live on BBC Six Music, playing When I Built This World from the new album Someday World. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for talking to us and for,
Thanks, Lauren.
for playing
Thank you very much,
4
Lauren.
wonderful tracks. We wish you the best of luck in all of your forthcoming adventures. Please come back and see us again very, very soon. Thank you so much for now to Brian, to Carl and the band over there in MV3. A pleasure and a privilege. Loved having you on the show. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.